Ready to rock? Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On the House. I have a special guest, John Morgan, here with me, someone I've been friends with for many years now and who's been, 2007 in the industry?
Yeah, man, right about that time.
I was thinking about that on the drive here. I was like, man, I remember reading your articles, listening to you back then. Did you ever think it would get to this point?
No, I didn't, man. To be honest with you, it's funny. I always tell the story. The first time I ever went to a UFC event was actually 1998, right? Like UFC 16.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Early?
Chris Brennan, who was just in here, was on that card. You know what I mean?
We should have took a photo.
I'm telling you, it was so funny. Small world stuff, man. Yes. You know how this all works out. His son is wrestling at Little Rock, and we did one of their duels and got to meet him. And it's just crazy. So it started in 1998 for me, to be honest with you.
Wow.
But I never did envision, as much as I love the sport and I thought it was incredible, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and I want to be involved with it. I never thought it would be the industry that it is. So it's pretty wild, man.
So what got you into it in 1998?
So this is crazy. Again, small world's crazy. So when I was a little kid, I grew up watching WWE, right? Macho Man, Hulk Hogan, whatever, liked it. Then I found out it was scripted, and I was like, my favorite thing, man.
Yeah.
Dang. So fast forward a couple years, and again, crazy circumstances. A friend of a friend knew Guy Mesger and was opening a kickboxing gym. Now, this is pre-93. This is pre-UFC. Guy Mesger was opening a kickboxing gym in Dallas.
Because he's from Texas.
Exactly. I grew up in Dallas, right? So through this friend of a friend of my mom's, we end up in this kickboxing gym that Guy Mesger is opening. And in it, he had a VHS tape of Muay Thai playing from Thailand. The horns in the background and everything going on. And I saw it and I was like, oh, that's what a real fight looks like. I'm like, that's incredible. And, Guy was cool, man. You think about him back in the day, the ponytail, and, here's a guy in Dallas. And then he ends up going to the UFC. So it just started this passion in me. And then the early UFCs came out, started watching that, collecting Pancrase tapes from over in Japan, and just watching all of it and soaking it all in. And 1998 was my 20th birthday, and they were in Kenner, Louisiana, basically New Orleans, right outside the Pontchartrain Event Center. And I was like, I got to go, man. I got to go see this. It was my 20th birthday. I think I paid like $50 to sit cage side. Like you can't even get a parking spot anymore for $50. You know what I mean? Like
you can't get a water for $50.
I'm telling you, man. And sat cage side, and from there, man, it was born. I was back in the day, man. I was working in the restaurant industry, and I was literally like dubbing over VHS tapes, making little highlight tapes for people to watch at my work. Just like, dude, you got to watch this. It's unbelievable. You got to watch this. And it kind of all led to all this, man.
And it's crazy because I couldn't sleep the other night. I was on UFC Fight Pass, and I watched their 20-year anniversary, and you're in that.
Yeah.
You're talking about it. I'm like, man, I always you see someone every day at work, and then the years go by, you're like, dude, John's an OG. Like, John's been in it for a minute.
I'm telling you, man. It was funny. Like I said, the whole Little Rock situation and Chris Brennan, and I was telling everybody in the car we were making the trip.
You're in the restaurant industry. You're just coming strictly as a fan at that point.
Yeah, 100%.
And then when does it segue into?
So about 2006, I'd worked all the way up to general manager as a restaurant, man. I worked for a company called Abuelos, great company. But it was one of those things where I was putting myself through school working in restaurants, and then when I got out of school, it was like the restaurant was paying more than journalism was.
Yep.
So I said, you know what, I'll just stick with that. And I got to a point, and I just wasn't happy. You know what I mean? Everything was good, man. Nice salary, insurance, 401k, respected in the workplace. But I was like, man, I don't want to look up one day and say I didn't go after it. Restaurants are always going to be here, so let me give this a shot. Crazy situation again. I used to be a daily MMA Weekly reader in the forums. I'd be lurking on the forums. Didn't really post a lot, but I'd be lurking on it. And there was a post from Gorgeous George Garcia that they were looking for somebody to work with them to help recap their interview. It was Tag Radio back then. It was Frank Trigg and Gorgeous George. And they were looking for somebody to recap interviews that they would publish on a site called UFC Junkie. That was before the UFC had sent a cease and desist letters politely suggesting that we not use UFC in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, look, I haven't, I'm not in the space right now, but I'm a huge fan of the space. Like I went to school for journalism, writing, I'd like to do it if you wouldn't mind. And he was like, they said, let's go. And started would listen to their interviews. I'd work a 12-hour shift at the restaurant, come home, listen to the interview, write up a recap of it, and then turn it in to Dan Stupp. And Dan Stupp read my stuff and was like, oh man, this guy's good. This guy's good. So I was just doing that. It was a free internship. You know what I mean? I was just doing it for free after I worked my 12, 13-hour day, no pay whatsoever, just to kind of get my foot in the door. Then lo and behold, MMA Junkie, UFC Junkie Time starts to grow pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And Dan Stupp is like, man, we're looking to hire somebody. We're looking to bring somebody on part-time. Now, this is, again, all the crazy circumstances are funny. At the time, I was living in Dayton, Ohio, because I'd been transferred from restaurant to restaurant to restaurant to restaurant. I was in Dayton, Ohio. He was like, man, we should get together and meet. Maybe let's talk. Where do you live? I'm like, well, I'm in Dayton, Ohio. He was like, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah, all the crazy time. So an hour away, I was like, well, let's get together. We met and talked, and he was like, let's bring you on part-time. And so brought me on part-time, and it was crazy because I had to, in order for me to have like some weekends off and that sort of thing, I basically demoted myself at my restaurant, promoted my assistant general manager over me because he had to be in the general manager had to be in the restaurant on the weekends.
Yeah.
So I promoted him over me. My regional partner was still one of my best friends to date. I was like, look, here's what I'm thinking. If you don't mind, like I'll still work underneath him and make sure everything's taken care of. Everything I do now, like it'll be his, but I'll make sure it's good. And he was like, bro, I know how much you love this stuff. Go do it. Did that for a while. And then 2008, after I'd been doing that for about a year or so, I was like, man, I want to go all in. I want to go all in and try this. And I moved out here to Las Vegas in 2008, quit my job in the restaurant business, cut my salary in half and then some. But I was like, I'm going to chase after this. I'm going to give it a shot. And been out here since 2008, and the whole journey started.
It's really cool to hear this. It's the first time I've ever heard your story, because we've heard about a lot of people gambling to make it in the sport as the sport was growing. You heard it from the UFC side, you heard it from athlete side, even management. I've never heard it from this side of the fence, so it's really cool to hear that. Is. And so 2008, you move here.
Yep. At
what point are you like, hey, this is, because I think like around that time is when you got Journalist of the Year, right? I remember that.
Yep.
What point though?
One other guy did win it one time.
Yeah. What point though do you start thinking like, okay, like this is for real? Like I'm really gonna. I mean, you gamble by moving here. I mean, that's a gamble, cutting your salary in half, right?
It is, and we started to grow and we started to build, and then in 2011 is when we sold MMA Junkie to USA Today, and we were talking for about a year before that. Basically, the way MMA Junkie started, it was three guys who met playing in a house poker game.
Wow.
One guy was an IT guy. One guy was an advertising guy, and then you had Dan Stupp, who was the editorial guy, and they were like, we should go in and do something together. And MMA, they had been watching The Ultimate Fighter, and they launched the blog, and that's how it started. And so it started growing. Dan was a phenomenal editor. I came on board, then we ended up bringing Steven Morocco on board, and I mean, just started adding the pieces, right? And it started growing, traffic was growing. Obviously, that was a big boom time for the UFC, so it was just right timing. And then we got to a point where we're like, listen, man, you know, kind of the guys that helped start it are kind of doing this part-time. We need a full-time IT guy. We need a full-time advertising guy. So what do? Do we try to get some help and bring this to the next level, or do we try to do it ourselves? And we ultimately decided, you know what? Why don't we try to find the right partner to work with and, you know, sell and work with them and build it that way. And Gannett, which is the parent company, USA Today, they came in and they were one of several bidders that were there, and we ended up ultimately selling it to them. And I think that was big. I'll never forget till later. The first time that, because being a partner with that means, okay, we're on their website, but we provide their print coverage as well.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the first time my parents saw like a USA Today with my story in it. You know what I mean? At that point, my parents are like, you know, they're like, we made it. I'm like, you know, I've been doing the same job for like 5 years now.
That's something like, about the paper at USA Today.
That was it. Once it was in print, now it's legit. Like this whole website mumbo jumbo you've been working on, we don't know about that. But once it's in print, you know, my boy is good. He did all right.
That's really cool. Like it's funny you say it too, because I think I started with Ken Pav, NM Agents in 08, formed Iridium in 09. But I always look at 2011 as like the year.
Yeah.
Like if 2011 doesn't happen, I don't know if I am where I am today. Like that.
It's crazy, right?
That was like the make or break year for me. Like, hey, something has to give right now.
It's tough. You know, there's so many people that have the dream now. Like, hey man, I want to get where you get. I want to get in it. And you always want to encourage them. Like, yeah, chase your dreams, do it. But it was, man, we did get kind of lucky with the timing, man. You know what I mean? We got in at the ground floor. We got very, very fortunate.
I don't know if you read the book. I think it's called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, but it talks about like how if you were like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, you were like in the Pacific Northwest and you were born between 67 or I don't know the exact numbers, but like you had to be in these pockets, right? And I always feel like you just said, right? You happen to be in Ohio in a certain time. Like I just did a podcast last week and I said, I think if Iridium had started 2 years later, we would never have been
it's amazing
where we are today. And I'm not trying to discount our hard work or what we've done, but like you're right, like you kind of had to hit it, like you had to enter that freeway space at the right time.
What if I hadn't made the decision to, hey, let me just go ahead and man up and move to Las Vegas and try it there?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, of course you're still gonna have access, but you're not gonna be at the headquarters every week and all this. So it like you always said, like you can't discount hard work, because that is one thing I pride myself in. I have a son now that I'm trying to raise, and I'm like, listen, work ethic, man, it means everything. So I don't want to be like, oh, everything was just fortune and good luck. No, I feel like I worked hard for it, and I deserve to have some respect for that. But I do feel like very, very blessed and very fortunate. Just kind of some right time, right place situations happen.
I mean, you were an early adopter into the Vegas boom too. I mean, you're 08. That's before. I mean,
bro.
Now we all moved. I can't say I wasn't. I came in 2020.
So
you came at right when this thing was about to really.
When I tell people, so a couple of things. Number one, first of all, when I moved out here, I was telling people, I'm like, you should move out here. I'm like, it's cheap.
Yeah.
I can't say that anymore. It's still cheaper than a lot of places, but Vegas used to be dirt cheap, and I got lucky, man. I so blessed, timing, fortunate. Mm-hmm. I bought a house in 2011, 2012 during the crash out here, right? Yeah. So like I blessed beyond, you know what I mean? That I was able to soak my roots, buy a house dirt cheap, you know what I mean? And it's given me a lot of freedom. So
I think it was Yuli Gomez was like one of the, he
he's a cop out here now.
Yeah, he lived out here, but I remember, I think it might have been the same time, I think like 2012, maybe 2014. I went to his house. It's like a mansion. He's like, yeah, I got this for a couple $100,000. I was like, what?
Crazy,
like,
right?
Like 6 bedrooms, like this ginormous house. And I remember thinking like,
prices were nuts for a while. I love it, man. It's funny for anybody that's never been out here. Like when I moved out here, actually saying that when I moved out here, the only experience I had with Las Vegas was fight weeks on the Strip. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to like it out there. So I was like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to get a year and make a decision. Because honestly, I mean, man, fight week on the Strip, it's cool, but it gets pretty old pretty fast. You know what I mean? But man, honestly, living here, I think it's a great town, man. I mean, obviously we have all the entertainment stuff in the world. If you're in the fight business, no better place to be. I think it's just a cool town.
I think MMA Junkie did such a good job of kind of making a base here. Like I remember like when you guys were at the Mandalay Bay at the sports book, like at the radio show, like
it's awesome.
I remember I could tell you like the first time I went on, I remember what a big deal I thought it was like to finally have a client on there, and those some good times. I feel like we're a little spoiled now, like because there's like 2 or 3 events here a month now. But remember, like it was like once a quarter before in the past, right? It'd be like a big deal. Usually it was a big card, and you'd be out here and energy would be bumping, you're like, oh yeah, it's a Vegas.
It's amazing. Yeah, we are definitely spoiled now. And obviously, going through the whole COVID thing when everything was here and all that. I mean, it's weird to now like walk into the Apex or walk into the PI. Because I remember, obviously when those things first opened, we were all like, whoa. And now you just walk in, you're like, back in here. It is what we do.
I always try, my wife she tries to remind me like, dude, your 21-year-old self would be going out of his skin right now. The guy who used to watch every countdown. And sometimes I have to count my blessings. I forget that. And talk to someone who's been in the game longer than me. It's so cool to see this, and I see the joy that you still have in it. And
the best.
I think that's what I love about our sport is that the people here that have been here for a long time, it's still like a lifelong passion, right? It's still something that you're excited about as the sport keeps evolving.
100%. Obviously my role with CFFC now. I mean, seeing the next wave of talent, developing that. I love that.
Isn't that such a great?
I love it.
I feel like CFFC and some of these other events that are doing stuff, I think it's awesome to watch because you're seeing the stars of tomorrow. You're literally seeing these guys, cut their teeth there and get their experience.
Chasing the dream. I'll tell you one thing though, before I forget, you talk about your wife reminding you. One thing I always try to do at a UFC event, no matter how busy, no matter what's going on, when Bob O'Reilly starts to play, I just stop. I stop. Whatever I'm doing, I sit back and I watch all those moments and I soak in that energy, and I'm just like, damn, man. And it's crazy how much, when you're watching those little clips, blue shirts pop up in those little highlights. I'm like, damn, I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, I remember that. But I still try to soak that in no matter what's going on, no matter how busy it is, no matter what's happening, just enjoy that. Because you're 100% right, man. Like there was, man, when I first started talking about trying to work in this industry full time, I didn't even really know what that meant or how to map it out. I just knew I wanted to do it.
Well, that's why it's so impressive. And I hope some of the listeners can understand that, like, there wasn't a path for you. You guys are very trailblazing in that sense. And it's a kudos to you and your partners that started that because, one, there isn't a blueprint on what to do. You're like you said, you're creating your own thing. And then, like, do we get partners? Do we sell? Well, you were kind of like the first generation to do it. And also, too, I mean, to work together for that many years and have the friendship and bond that you guys did is very impressive. It's very hard when you have partners in a business to work like that. So it's impressive what you guys did. It really is. Like,
appreciate that.
I try to always, someone that started a business, you always appreciate others that started a business and went after it. You're like, man, that's really awesome to see them. I mean, and I mean, it sounds silly, but if I was your parents, yeah, seeing that in print, that's pretty badass. You know, that's like, damn, dude. Like, I was literally in the restaurant industry. Now I'm over here in USA Today.
Know. It's so crazy, man. I tell you, you know, and obviously it was cool for me. Like, don't get me wrong. I've got some of the old 2011 USA Today newspapers in my closet right now. I say this cool. I remember one that was crazy. I had no idea this happened. So I flew over to Macau for one of like the Tough China editions. I don't remember exactly which event it was, but I remember when I flew back, I was in the airport lounge in Hong Kong, and there was a USA Today there. I didn't even know they had like an international edition. I was like, oh, that's cool. Let me grab that USA Today international edition in the Hong Kong airport. Flip through it, and boom, there's my recap of the fight the night before, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I grew up in a small town. I mean, I'm from Dallas, but I'm really from DeSoto, which is a small suburb outside of, you know. And I'm like, from where I came from to now, here's, you know, my print and words in this newspaper in Hong Kong. Like, that's awesome. Damn, dude. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does your son kind of have an idea of all that you've gone through to get to this point?
I'm trying to teach. It's fun. The funny thing with my son is that my son accompanies me to a lot of like MMA places. So in a lot of it, he's like, you're famous. And I'm like, I am not. I'm like, just, you know, but, you know,
I've seen him a lot with you. That's why I asked. I seem like you guys have a great relationship.
Oh, great. I love that kid. It's funny because, I mean, you know, like we will be at like a restaurant or something and somebody like, John Morgan, what's good? Because, you know, there's MMA fans everywhere, right? And so it is cool. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think it's cool as hell. Like, please, if you ever see me and you want to say hello, come say hello. I think it's cool, right? But my kid, you know, he's like, oh, you're famous. I'm like, son, in a very, very tiny piece of this world, a lot of people know me. I'm like, outside of that, I ain't nobody. But no, man, I'm definitely trying to instill those values in him, man. Like you said, work ethic, man. I think that means so much. You know, just honesty, treating people right. I mean, it's so basic, you know what I mean? But
and you be consistent. I think that's something that Coach Safe said this to me. I think it was like 2018, maybe 19. We had like a good year. Like we're finally starting to make some waves here. And he was like, hey, man, you had a real good year. And I remember thinking like, yeah, we did. He's like, but anyone can do it once. You need to do it for like a decade straight.
Hey.
And that's why I have so much respect for you, because I've seen you, you know, 20 years in this, almost 20 years in this now, you know, consistently producing good work, consistently being at the top of your game. I hope your son sees that that's where I think the money's at. That you day in, day out, you know what I mean? You've been putting brick by brick on it, you know.
Appreciate it. You know, growing up in the restaurant business, it's funny how many things like lessons that I took from that time in the restaurant business. But there, it was just, you're only as good as your last shift. You know what I mean? Like you can have an amazing restaurant and you've worked your hard and you've trained your staff and you've built everything, and then it crashes and burns one night and everybody walks out of there pissed off. And guess what, man? Now you got a whole bunch of people talking bad about your restaurant at this point. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to keep going out. Like I do appreciate developing a reputation or developing, you know, people trusting you, but you still got to go out and do it all the time, over and over, right?
Yeah. You know, I actually served tables all through college and law school. And actually, I'll be honest, I admit it here, for the first years of the company, I had to serve tables at night at Outback as an attorney. But my general manager, came to me one day and he said, Jason, do you have the same energy that you do on the first table of the night as you do the last table of your night? And it really taught me that lesson. Like, man, you got to bring the same energy to everyone. Kind of like maybe with clients, right? If you meet certain clients early in the day or later in the day, you got to keep that. So it's funny. There's so many lessons you can learn from the restaurant industry.
100%, man. Just dealing with people and the work ethic and all those things, man. I value that time. It's like I said, man. I wouldn't hate if everything went away and I had to go back, man. Yeah. I wouldn't hate it. I like working like on a weekend shift. Everybody's grinding. Like there's something cool about the energy and the feel of like everything's fun. Working and walking out with cash in your pocket every day doesn't hurt either, right? You don't have to wait for a paycheck or you don't have to wait for an invoice to get paid, right? You're just walking out with some cash.
And I also saw your son trains, by the way. Yeah. So he's under Alex. I saw
he is.
So he's doing the judo route or jiu-jitsu?
Judo and jiu-jitsu. Awesome. Like obviously Alex has that judo base. So I started out, so I knew that I wanted my son to train regardless. Not that I wanted to fight. I just honestly think every kid should train. Fortunately, my wife feels that way too. Just, you know, kids get bullied and self-confidence and man, I don't have to preach it to you, but I do honestly believe every child out there should be training.
I have a nephew that I spend a lot of time with, and he's 3. And I'm asking you for these reasons actually selfishly to get your perspective.
You need to. I think every child out there should train just because of the self-confidence that it gives you, because it's good exercise and that sort of thing too. But also, I mean, just, you know, a bully is a bully because you've never been in a fight before, right? And you don't know what it's like for somebody to grab you or somebody to punch you, and so you're scared. But if you've done it, you know what I mean? Like, I've always said this. I'm not saying my kid won't get his ass kicked. He may get his ass kicked someday. But at least I know he won't be scared. And that's all I ask, you know, that he won't be bullied because he's not afraid. But yeah, so I started out here. Had him go to Extreme Couture first. It's actually closer to our house. Started training there. Nice wrestling base.
Nice.
Did that for a year. Took him to Roxanne Modafferi, right? Because as a kid, come on, Roxy as a coach, she is a big kid. You know what I mean? She's going. So took there for a year. Went to Zenith for a year, Drysdale, because I wanted to see what hardcore jiu-jitsu looked like, right? How this is it. Then of course the pandemic kind of slowed things down a little bit. But Alex Davis has been a friend of mine for a long time. And even when he was still in Brazil, he was saying, look, I'm going to come to Vegas someday. And when I open up a school in Vegas, I want you to take your son to my school. Nice. And I was like, absolutely, absolutely. He's been a friend of mine. He's a great black belt. Obviously, you've rolled with him, man. He's talented. Like, he's got the judo base. And so as soon as he opened the school, I was like, hey, promise is a promise. And it's not the closest for me. I live in Mountain's Edge. I'm driving over there to Henderson, but I promise is a promise. And he's a phenomenal instructor.
He's amazing.
He's a great guy. I mean, he as a black belt, he's on the mat all the time. So it's pretty cool,
Awesome. And your son likes it?
He does. He doesn't love it. I posted the other day. He just got his gray black belt.
Okay.
And I posted it. And I'm proud of him though, because it's not his passion. It's not what he loves. Honestly, his passion is playing guitar right now, which is awesome. Cool. I know. Trust me. I'm fostering that too. Like, I want you to have that. Enjoy it. It's cool. Like, I don't have to remind him, hey, you need to go practice. No, he just picks it up and plays. So that's his passion. But he sticks with it. Doesn't complain. Does every now and then does he go, hey, do we have to go tonight? And you're like, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Gets out there, just performs, doesn't complain. It's not. Is it anything that he's going to want to do competitively? No, absolutely not. Maybe something will change. Who knows as he gets older? But he does it, and I'm proud of him. So he's improving. You see the skills improving. He's 12. He'll be 13 in May. He's starting to hit that growth spurt.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
So he's starting to kind of turn into a little bit of a man, and it's cool to see, man.
Yeah, I always feel like every kid should train. I think you said it, nailed it on the head, just so they have that confidence. My nephew started doing wrestling at Gold Rush with Chase Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's 3. But I also, I've talked to Alex about when the time comes, I think he has to be, I think 5 is what Alex said.
Yeah.
And my nephew at this point, he's obsessed with fighting.
That's cool.
I brought him to Apex, and if he stays with it, great, you know what I mean? But I just want him to have a base. I just want him to learn those life lessons that martial arts can teach. If he doesn't want to, ever compete, or I just want him to
100%.
not be the wussy on the playground. I just want him to have a,
Boy, and I'll tell you what, man, wrestling. I have become such a fan of wrestling, man. Obviously, working, we were talking about before we got started, match day and everything that's going on with the NCAA collegiate wrestling. If you can start him in wrestling, I mean, again, nothing wrong with jiu-jitsu, nothing wrong with judo. Any kind of grappling art is good. But there's something different about them wrestlers, man. You know what I mean? Just that work ethic, that grind that they have, man. If they can embrace that, I love it, man. And obviously seeing the talent, I mean, they all kind of blend together. But there's something about that wrestler's work ethic that's amazing.
I just want to teach him that adversity too. If I get him in a few tournaments, maybe he loses a match, has to learn to go through the loser's bracket. Yep. I think it's good for kids to face adversity and then keep going. I think so much, we tend to become a little soft in our society lately.
Agreed.
And I just want him to, be tough. Just, don't quit.
There's nobody to blame out there. I love team sports, obviously, but, that guy, he should have stopped it over there. He made the throwing error. No. It's you. You and that other person went out there. There's nobody else to blame. It's you. And your victories are yours to enjoy, and, your losses are yours to understand.
Exactly.
And as you said, show some resilience, show some adversity, bounce back from that, understand that it's not the end of the world. I mean, and again, translate this. And everything that I do, when I think about my son especially, is that the ultimate goal is just for him to be a good human being, to be a good person, right? But that's life, right? Like, you lose in a jiu-jitsu match and you're down and you're upset and then you don't want to go out there the next day, or you don't want to train the next day. What happens when you start the firm and you're having trouble scoring a client, or somebody that you represent thinks you did something wrong when you didn't, and they leave and they get lured off by some other manager. You know what I mean? There's all these little things. What do you do? Do you pack up and you're like, oh, man, guess it ain't for me? Or do you say, no, man, this is what I want to do. This is my dream. Guess what?
Double down.
Let's go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
and I think you nailed it on the head. I just want him to be tough and just understand that this is life. I don't want him to have a false sense of life, turn 18, and it's like, oh, the world all ain't sunshine and rainbows every day, and that it's tough. Might as well start teaching him now, hey, every day's gonna have its own little.
That's it. Nobody's giving you nothing, right? That's it. Nobody gives you nothing. Don't get me wrong. You can look at people that gave you a break. Do I thank Dan Stupp for giving me the opportunity? Do I thank Gorgeous George and go 100%? but nobody gave you nothing. You know, you may get an opportunity and you can thank them for that, but at that point, you got to be the one to deliver, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to give you anything. So
what did the Brands brothers say? You don't get what you deserve, you get what you earn.
Those guys are intense as hell, man. We did a couple. I mean, obviously I'd seen them on TV and you know, from a distance, but we did a couple of Iowa matches at the end of last year that are on UFC Fight Pass. You can check it out. Those dudes are just intense.
I love it.
Like I was joking about it because we were trying to make sure we had, you know, which one was which, so we had it right for the broadcast. So they were standing over beforehand, and you know, they both had, you know, hats and hoodies on, so it was kind of tough. But I went over and shook my hand just to introduce them, to try to get them to say who was which. And I joked afterwards, like I was working with Justin James, and I walked back over there. I was like, Justin, I was like, I was made to understand that I was not to come shake their hands, like just the way they were. You know what I mean? They just looked. I was like, hey guys, pleasure to have you here, man. We're so excited. I'm going to be on the broadcast today. If there's anything that we can do for you or anything you need from us, man, like please, you know, and it just shaking their hand. It was just like, I was like, all right, well, then I'm just going to crawl back over here out of the way. I apologize, sir. You guys have some fun today.
They're just on a one-track mind.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. And just from match 1 to match 10, so intense. I mean, just so it's amazing to watch, man.
I really want to take my nephew to wrestling match so he can kind of see like where it all leads up to, right? Right now he's going to practice every day. He hasn't, obviously he's 3, he hasn't competed or nothing, but my wife only likes it right now because she has something to hold over his head now, because she can say, we're not going to take you to wrestling. Oh, no. You know, like,
that's awesome.
Yeah. But
a lot of times, like punishment the other way. So we don't want to be there.
Yeah. But I want him to see, like, because I mean, those matches, like the ones you guys do is, I mean,
it's been so cool, man. And, you know, to Oklahoma State, I mean, even, you know, them coming to town against Little Rock, the program that Little Rock has built, like I said, seeing in Iowa, the passion of Iowa State. We've got Iowa State and Missouri this upcoming weekend. That'll be a great match. Yeah, it's actually, I'm really excited for this weekend. It's senior day there in Missouri. It's the final regular season duel for both teams. Obviously, Iowa State's tough. It's going to be a great match, but it's Keegan O'Toole's final home match before he goes. He's sitting on 99 wins. Wow. So he's returning. He had a little layoff because he had some injury. He's coming back looking for his 100th win on senior day. It's Keegan O'Toole bobblehead night. You know what I mean? They got these little bobbleheads everywhere. So yeah, it's all the storyline around it, which it's been fun, man. Match day has been the vision of Rob Haydak, our CEO. So smart, man. And he loves wrestling, man. As much as he loves MMA and as great as he's done with CFSC, he loves wrestling. And so this has been a real passion project for him. So it's been fun for me to be involved with it. And on two sides of it. I
love that Rob is pushing it. I think that's so good for the sport, good for Fight Pass, just good for everyone involved, you know. We actually had Iowa State come do some practices at our gym here. When they were here for Cliff Keen, and
that's awesome.
You remember Yadi Meza, who fought in there? His son, Adrian wrestles for Iowa State. And
that's his son?
Yeah. Wow. And so it's super cool. Just to, you know, see the world, everything's coming full circle, right? Like, you're just like, I mean, one, it makes me feel like I'm getting old, but you start seeing this stuff. And
I nailed it. Like I said, we were talking about, you know, we were driving from Columbia, Missouri to Little Rock, Arkansas to do the Arkansas match against Oklahoma State. So with match day, I do commentary on some of them, but I also work on the production side of it. So I've been I've been learning like the graphics and just trying to soak in as much knowledge as I can. We were doing a little caravan because we had like 3 events in 5 days. And we were driving. I was going through and I was editing photos, and I just saw Tyler Brennan, and I'm like, I had no idea. And I'm like, that has to be Chris Brennan's son. Like, it absolutely has to be. Yeah. And so then I was like, I Googled it. And I'm like, oh, it is his son. I'm like, that's so cool because Chris Brennan fought at the first UFC that I was ever at, and now I'm here calling a match with his son on it, you know what I mean? And you see the way it's growing, and just the lineage of wrestling as a whole in mixed martial arts, but just the whole community building, man. It's super cool.
No, it's really cool that Rob's doing that. I think I think there's obviously a huge connection between wrestling and MMA, and like you said, seeing the generations of the next generation come up with their sons and stuff. It's pretty cool to see.
I'll tell you one that I think a lot of people probably aren't as aware as they should be. Because we've done a couple of Missouri matches over the years. We did a few last year. We did some this year. We did one this year, actually, in Wisconsin. It was Ben Askren's high school, and it was also Keegan O'Toole and Parker Keck. It was Keegan O'Toole's high school, Parker Keckeisen was the Ben Askren guy. But I think even me, as the hardcore MMA, and, you know, I watch everything. So I watched the Bellator run, the One Championship run, everything. But when you think about the guys that came out of Missouri, you think about Michael Chandler, Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, right? They all wrestled there, and you think about them. But Ben Askren was a different animal, man. Like, that dude was like, because I wasn't a big college wrestling fan, and I've been learning the history of it. And so as an MMA fan, you might not think about that. You might think of those other two guys first. But Askren was game-changing, revolutionary, next level. I mean, insane the stats that he put up.
He had the funk.
Yeah, he had the funk, man. It was crazy. So it was cool. It was cool to work with him on that event, but just cool to see what he accomplished at Missouri. And I love the lineage of college wrestling. So I hope, again, it's a multi-year partnership right now with Fight Pass. I love that they're seeing the vision as well, and that they're like, this is something we want to do, and I just hope it keeps growing because there is such a natural tie between the sports.
What's been the best arena that you've commentated at, or the best match, like what atmosphere so far that you think?
Man,
we put you on the spot here. And you're piss off some people.
Honestly, I know Little Rock's facility was amazing.
Right?
Amazing, man. Like what they have there, their big arena was nice, but we did just do Mizzou's huge arena. Now we're going back to Missouri this weekend, and it's called the Hearn Center. It's one of their older arenas that they use, but we did the big basketball arena just a couple of weeks ago, which was incredible. There's been some fun ones, but the cool ones are the ones that we've done outside of the schools, right? We went in Wyoming and did a barn, right? We did the rodeo arena. Like those things have been just next level stuff. Where the barn one was incredible. I mean, we were out in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking nowhere.
It's kind of like Field of Dreams type.
100%
for wrestling.
It was unbelievable. Now you say Field of Dreams, I'll give you, because we did one on a baseball field, but unfortunately it was right at sunset. This is a crazy story, but this will tell you about college wrestling, right? So it's Nebraska and Campbell, right? Mm-hmm. We're doing it on Campbell's baseball field. Beautiful day, man. Not a cloud in the sky. Me and Shane Sparks are out there. We're making baseball jokes, setting it up. About 2 matches in, start to hear a little squeak on the mat. You're like, uh-oh. So the humidity's starting to build. The sun's going down. The humidity's starting to build. They went ahead and did another match, but it was obvious there was a little bit of sliding on the mat. And obviously, you got to have grip with wrestling, with the way they move around. So everybody just kind of looked up, and we're trying to towel dry it and do what we can. And everybody's like, man, I just think with the sun going down, the humidity is going to be too much. Like, what do we do? And I was like, man, I wonder if Nebraska is just going to leave. And Campbell, Scotty sent us, the team there. They're like, hey, there's a building right over there about 100 yards away. What if we just roll up the mats and set over there? Are you guys okay with that? And Nebraska was like, and Nebraska's a powerhouse, right? I mean, this is a top school. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. And the whole team from Campbell and the support staff, they just roll up the mats, take them over 100 yards down, reset them up. Credit to our broadcast team as well. Now, all we could get in there, at one point, all we could bring in was like one camera because we couldn't move the whole production. But we were like, hey, we can get one camera. And I had a headset. I was like, can we plug this headset into the camera and make that work? Yeah, we can do that. And stuck. But those wrestlers, those teams literally picked up. I mean, what other sport could you pick up the playing surface, relocate it somewhere else, set it back up, and everybody's like, let's just keep going. You know what I mean? So it was chaos.
And that's the epitome of the wrestler's mentality too, right? Like just figure it out.
Figure it out. Let's go. It's a little wet out here. Let's just bring it inside. And I mean, and they 5 minutes of warm up back in here. Let's go. And they kept it going. So there's been some amazing ones. Like I said, David Carr's homecoming last year, like taking these college athletes back to their high schools and letting them compete one more time in their high school and letting their local friends and family.
It's so cool.
I mean, there's been so many cool events.
How is it like going from like commentating MMA to wrestling, and kind of how does that?
It's challenging, right? Because in MMA, I know it. You know what I mean? In wrestling, I don't know it as well, but I always try to make sure I'm honest with the audience. Like I'm not going to sit there on that mic and pretend I know more about this sport than you do. But that's kind of one thing we do. So if you watch those match day broadcasts, anybody hasn't seen them, it was my idea. We put these little like educational graphics. Like, we'll start talking about near fall points. We'll put up a little education graphic. What does near fall mean? How does that work? What is it? Because look, I started a place not too long ago where I didn't really know that much about it. And if you sit down and watch a wrestling match for the first time and you don't know the rules, the scoring, the individual scoring, the team scoring, it's hard. It's intimidating, right? And fortunately, like the grappling itself kind of ports over a little bit, but it's so fast and it's so high level. So it's tough, man. So it's I'll be honest with you, it's more challenging for me, but it just makes me work harder. Go like, hey, I'm gonna watch more film. I'm gonna study. I'm gonna learn. And again, I always try to be honest and just say, look, I want you to know that I'm an MMA fan learning about this too, because I'm assuming if you're watching on UFC Fight Pass now. We always have somebody there, like, this weekend it'll be me and Shane Sparks.
Yep.
Myself and Justin Janes work together, wrestling coach at Extreme Couture, college wrestler himself. So his technical knowledge is off the chart. So we're always going to have somebody like that as part of the team that has that insane technical knowledge that they can nail it. And I'm going to try to help tell the story along a little bit, help relate it to an MMA audience, help tell the story. Because I do think sometimes the wrestling, and I've watched, since we started doing match day, I've watched a lot of wrestling, and there's not a lot of storytelling in it, man. It's just like we go on air, The matches happen. We go off air, and I'm like, no. What is it? Who is this? Why does this matter? Not just beyond the individual match. Try to do a little more storytelling whenever we can.
You brought up a good point. I didn't think of it like that too, because it is on Fight Pass. You probably are speaking to an MMA audience that's tuning in. So it does kind of change your purview, right, and how you're, commentating and doing all that, because you have.
But we still owe it to those hardcores. Yeah, we still owe it to those hardcores. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be some hardcores that try it. Because Fight Pass did a great thing. They came up with a college wrestling only bundle, $2.99 a month. If all you want to watch is college wrestling, $2.99 a month. That's it. Wow. You don't even have to pay for the full thing. Now, you don't get all the other MMA stuff, but you get the college wrestling. So we know that, and you can cancel it after 1 month. So if you want to look at it as a $2.99 pay-per-view for one thing, then do that, But we want hardcores when they tune in to not be like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? They have no idea what they're talking about. But yes, I think the majority of people are going to be probably MMA fans that are going, I don't know what this is. What am I watching? Let me try to explain it to you a little bit.
Yeah. And that's awesome too, because I'm assuming, probably the matches you guys are covering, there's going to be 1 or 2 MMA guys on those mats at least.
100%.
I would assume.
100%.
Especially with the schools that you guys are covering that have a long, like you just said, Mizzou has a long history of producing some very talented MMA fighters.
We were actually talking about that as a CFFC team. Is like, how cool is that going to be when the first time we have somebody that does college wrestling for us, fights MMA for us, maybe does submission grappling for us, and we're also doing Muay Thai as well. So like, what happens when we get an athlete that has competed under all 4 disciplines? Like, how cool will that be? And
then goes to the UFC.
And then goes to the UFC.
Oh, that's super
which
cool.
Again, that's what it's all about, man. Like I absolutely love. Right now I say that the top prospect in our organization is Bilal Hassan. He's our flyweight champion. Yep. Like, I can't wait for him to get the call. You know what I mean? Like, it's so cool to see people, and man, you get to be a part of this as well, man. And I'm jealous of you when you get to make that call to tell them, oh, by the way, guess what? I just heard from Sean. I just heard from Mick. Guess what you're doing next Saturday? Yeah. I mean, it's so cool to see people chasing their dreams, man, and to just be going after it. It's why I started, kind of a transition basically more to doing commentary than anything else at this point. And I love that aspect of it, because going back to the storytelling, you know what I mean? And if I can, ultimately, again, same thing. It's up to these athletes to go out there and win. It's up to these athletes to go out there and make themselves marketable. Yep. But if I can play a little part of that on the broadcast and help educate people, what this guy does, you know what sacrifices he's made, you know what adversity he's had to battle through, et cetera, and help tell that story so that you watch and go, damn, I like that guy. I like that girl. I want to cheer for that one. Then I feel like I'm helping,
It's funny you bring this up, because I was saying it was an event a while back, and I think we had a client headlining the card, and everyone's like, oh, you're nervous for the client that's headlining the card? And I was like, obviously I am. But John, I was real nervous for the second fight of the night, because it was do or die for that kid. Right. And if he lost, he was cut. Yep. And I was wondering, like, man, I wonder if the UFC started like putting a little more, I think it's a cool show they could do. Like, it's just an idea I have, like kind of explaining what the fight means to those fighters. It's not just the second or third fight of the night. It could be, hey, this guy's 1 and 2. He's on the last fight of his contract.
This is, I was talking about this the other day. This is something I think people forget. And I see it, and I get it. I understand, especially with as much MMA as there is now. Again, we're old school, right? We remember when there was a USC every quarter, or there, you know what I mean? No, now it's every week. And then there's PFL, and there's Bellator, and there's not Bellator, there's PFL, there's whatever it is. Yeah. But you look at, and I get it, that it's real easy sometimes to look at a card on paper, and it's a bunch of names you're not really familiar with because they're new, or maybe you just forgot because there's so many names. There's 700 guys and girls on the roster now, and you just kind of take a cursory look at it and you go, I don't know about this card. I don't know if I'm excited for it. But you got to remember, man, that is the biggest night of all 24 of those people's lives. Every single time they do it, man. You know what I mean? It's not just, whatever, you know. Oh, man. And I think I've actually said this, and I mean it, man. Like in my junkie career, my journalism career, I think I honestly got more passion and excitement covering the undercards than I did sometimes the main card. Like, by the time George St. Pierre was ready to retire, like, I could do his interviews for him. Like, I know what he's going to say. You know what I mean? It's like, and I mean that as no disrespect, but it's like you interview somebody 100 times. You know what I mean? But man, when you see these people bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, just making it in, like the ones that are they're nervous, you know, and that one always trips me out when you see people that are nervous to do an interview. I'm like, you fight in a steel cage for a living, and you're nervous because there's 3 cameras and a microphone in front of you. Like, what are you doing? But it's just that's what's so unique about this, man. And so, like, I love that aspect. I mean, I love being able to see that because, like I said, you're seeing men and women chase their dreams, and you know how much sacrifice it takes to be even remotely successful in the sport, and not only sacrifice by you, but sacrifice for the people around you and all your support staff. You know, whether it be your wife, your girlfriend, your friends, your family, whatever it is, man. It's just it's so hard to get to the very best. And I love seeing people chasing their dream.
And it's kind of like, I feel like I don't know if I guess WWE is like sports entertainment, right? But like that's the only other thing I can think of where like you literally go from maybe you're at a high school gym competing, the next week you're, at MSG. Like
it's crazy.
It's kind of like our sport is like, most sports you kind of gradually kind of like work, you're playing college football in front of 1,000 people, then you go play NFL. You're playing basketball in a sold out arena, then you're Our sport's like one of the only sports I feel like
you're in a barn one week and then the next week, you're
fighting next to Mechanical Bull. The next week you got Bruce Buffer saying your name, and you're just like,
what am I doing?
Like what? Like life is wild. It's
crazy, yeah. Especially if you make your debut on one of the big arena shows or whatever. I mean, it can just totally blow your mind that you're even there. And man, obviously you see this because you're dealing with athletes and you're dealing with the psychology. The psychology of the sport is amazing, and I think that's something that I always find inspiring too, is because like if you're not around the sport and you just look at it, you probably go, man, like those dudes, those girls that get in there, like, man, they're just a bunch of badasses. Like I wish I was savage like that, not realizing like, bro, they have all the same doubts that you do, man. They have all the same fears. They have all the same. I mean, Cowboy Cerrone, who is one of my all-time favorites in the sport. Yeah. I just remember when he was one of the first people I remember really talking about that. Like, bro, I throw up in the locker room before every fight.
I think he was, at least for me, the first person I ever saw identify it like, oh, wow, he's putting it out there.
And I loved it because for me, it's the same thing. And I'm like, bro, you're anybody, anywhere, anytime. And you're telling me he's like, yeah, sit there every time. I go, why am I doing this? Like, I'm never doing this again. What an idiot. And then as soon as he walks out, he's like, book me another fight. Let's go. I can't wait to do this. But I love that. Like, I thought that was so eye-opening. If you're like, if that dude who is that guy is still getting nervous and scared and worried. Like the psychology of the sport is unbelievable, and it's inspiring, man. It's inspiring.
It's really inspiring. I feel like Cowboy. I agree with you. Cowboy was the first time he did it. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is eye-opening. And the second time, or at least for me, I remember when Volk gave that speech.
Yep.
And that really hit home for me because I have a lot of guys that like they need that mountain to climb in front of them, right? They need that.
100%
to focus when they don't have something in front of them. I think Dustin Poirier actually did something the other day. He's like, hey, like I'm what do you say? I'm a danger to myself, or I'm a problem to myself when I don't have something like. But he's able to identify it now. He said, right?
Yeah,
he said,
you gotta have a goal. You gotta have a focus, and yeah, it's so, man. It really is so inspiring. And then the flip side, the psychology of after the career too, right? Like this is and I've seen a lot of people I think misinterpret this. That Joe Silva used to talk. It was very famous. I'm sure you heard him say it. Joe Silva back in the day said, always remember. This is not a career, it's an opportunity, right? Yeah. And I've heard a lot of people kind of misconstrue that to be like, oh, what do you mean? Look, you can't do it forever. You can't do it forever. You can't do this for 40 years. No. This is an opportunity. Get in, make as much money as you can, and make sure you're getting yourself ready for the next stage. But that's hard sometimes because you identify yourself as a fighter. You know what I mean? That is your career, is your identity, and then you can't do it anymore. And then how do you transition to keeping yourself in the right mindset and understanding?
And that's why we do those empowerment forms of the agency. And a lot of other things we're trying to implement is because one aspect that you're right is the mental side, right? Where I'm a fighter, like, no, you're no longer a fighter.
Yeah.
And that's hard, is finding what they identify as after the career's over. But secondly is to make sure they find a secondary passion in their life. I think the problem is, John, you know this, I mean, I think we both could say that we went all in, right? There was no plan B for us in our careers, and that's where we are today. But in a situation like fighting, you do need like a plan A 2.0, right?
Right.
You do need to like, okay, while I'm hot, I need to utilize the opportunities that the cage has provided me for outside the cage to find different avenues of life that maybe I could be interested in when fighting's over with.
100%.
And I think that's the key. As a manager, I feel like I want to be graded at. My guy retired at 40, which most were retired before that. But say he went to 40, he still has another 40 years of life to live. We have to do a good job of making sure these guys are okay, man.
I love the fact that you guys do those seminars and you are trying to educate and that you are trying to help and that you are trying to open those, because it is. I mean, there's a lot of great success stories where you hear like, guys that, every time I got a purse, I bought a different house. You know what I mean? Now I have like 15 rental properties.
Joseph Benavidez, I think, is a great example of that. And he's helped a lot of our athletes buy a ton of properties and educate them on it. And
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But you have to do that. It's, a big part of the reason I left MMA Junkie was the fact that I was starting to do more commentating and really enjoying it. And things had changed, and support staff and bosses and all those things. Dan Stupp had moved on, and they started making it difficult for me to do commentary. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If you're not promoting me to run this place, why are you preventing me from doing something else? It's like, you know what I mean? I need to have because I love my job as first question guy and reporter. I love all that, but I'm like, can't do the same job forever. Like I don't want to be gone 5 and 6 days a week every week
with your family and
with my
everything.
family. So man, when I was single, traveling the world, let's go. When I got married, still good. Your little absence makes the heart grow fonder, But once you have a kid and like you're missing, I'll never forget, man. I believe it was the third birthday, if I remember. It was either second or third birthday. There was a fight night in Manila in the Philippines.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years old. I'm like, my kid's not gonna remember that. Like, we'll just celebrate a different day. Like, who cares? So I went, but I woke up in Manila on his birthday, and I was just like, what am I doing here? Like, what? Like, this doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, of course, I'm happy to be here and I'm honored. So anyway, you're 100% right. You got to transition to a different position and to have different options available. And yes, fortunately for me, I found something that's still in the same industry.
Yep.
And still something I'm very passionate about. But man,
you're very good at it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. I love it. And it was hard. It's funny. You kind of talk about like going all in on yourself, betting on yourself, and those things. Like when I left the restaurant industry to come to Vegas, in the time since I moved out here in 2008, I always said there's no way I could ever do that again, because at the time I didn't have a kid and I didn't have a mortgage. So I was like, whatever, man. Like I'll just do this. I'll take this chance and I can always go back. I was like, I could never do that again. And then I got to that crossroads where I was like, man, I could quit doing commentary like they're trying to get me to do here, and I could stay where I'm at, and it's comfortable and it's good, and fortunately I have good relationships and it's good. I was like, or I can start looking at what's next and chase what's next and go after that. And I was really torn on it. And I'll tell you what, man, my wife said some of the coolest thing to me ever. I was talking to her about what I was doing, and that I was a little worried because I do have a mortgage and I do have a kid, and that this was going to mean a pay cut, and this was going to mean rebuilding, and it was no certainty, right? There's no career path for sure. And she said, John, she's like, you're the hardest working man I've ever met. She's like, I have no doubt in my mind that whatever happens, you will make sure that this family's taken care of, and I support you wholeheartedly in whatever you want to do. Bro, oh man, I get choked up now. Like, what more could you want to hear? Like, you got my back?
That's a writer right
You
there.
got my, I was like, then let's do this. You know what I mean? And but it's funny, CM Punk, who's become a good friend of mine through working with CFFC, a couple months before I made that decision, we were having a different conversation about some of the things that he was going through. And it's, it's a cliche, but we were just standing outside an airport one time having a totally different conversation. He was like, man, you always have to bet on yourself, man. You'll never lose. You just always have to bet on yourself. And it wasn't even talking about my situation, but saying that resonated with me. And I'm like, damn, it's so true, man. Like, it is scary sometimes to take those steps and to take those leaps. But if you do it and you're all in and you make sure, and you can't just say you made the decision and then be like, I guess it didn't work out. No. Can you lay your head on your pillow at night knowing I did everything I possibly could to make that work? And maybe it won't, but at least you can be comfortable because damn it, I tried. I gave it that. I don't have to have any regrets. I know I gave it a shot. You know what I mean? So blessed, man. This journey is still going for me. And I always joke. I want to be that like 85-year-old dude sitting at cage side one day, and they're like, what? You saw Anderson Silva in person? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, let me tell you about what that was like.
I believe it. I always look at you as like kind of like a Cal Ripken, just a Mr. Consistent.
That's it.
Day in, day out, you're always there. I always tell like, man, John Morgan, he's making a career out of this.
Appreciate that, man.
It's funny you said what you're saying about gambling on yourself, because I think sometimes like when you sign a client, that the sport's a jealous girlfriend. Your eyes have to be solely on her. If your eyes go elsewhere, she's going to burn you 8 ways sideways. It's going to end up bad. You're going to end up knocked out, ass up, face down in front of a million people like a virgin on prom night. It's going to be bad for you.
Yep.
So when you sign someone and they don't know you, you're going to know them. I'm not going to build trust in one night. It's hard to look at a wife or a significant other and, it's easy for me to sit here and say, hey, gamble on yourself. Because not only are they doing what you and I did, but they're doing it in a sport that ends up in pain if it goes wrong, correct? But it's also like, hey, like if you want your husband or significant other, whoever that person is, to have peace of mind, like they have to you have to like see this through. And I'm not saying this is going to be easy. If anything, I admire you because I know how hard this sport is. This sport is going to require everything from the whole family, not just the fighter itself. And there's no guarantees, no promises, no nothing, like I look at Diego Lopez right now, who had 20 odd fights, right? Amazing. 28 years old, like you're not even sure, like it's almost like the sport wants to test these fighters to see how far they're willing to go. And then just, like a Glover Teixeira, right? or a Charles
one.
Rivera,
Yep.
or a Dustin Poirier, like one of these guys, or a Brandon Moreno who's cut and come back. Like the sport, or Juna Rosa for crying out loud, 3 goes in the UFC, right? Like the sport just wants to like test you. That's why I think it's the greatest sport, because it'll push you to limits, and just when you're about to break, okay, I'm gonna reward you. Now. You know what I mean? Now you're gonna get your moment around the sun, and like I always look at Glover Teixeira as a perfect example, as a guy that just, it's not who's good, it's who's left. If you just stick around and you do things day in, day out right, you're gonna get rewarded. But there's gonna be moments where you're like, what the hell am I doing in this thing?
You bring up so many good stories, man. Diego Lopez, like, you know, that magical year he had. I mean, obviously he's got magical things still happening, but the year that changed his life. I'll tell you one of my pet peeves sometimes is when the UFC gives a bonus to like somebody in a main event. Not that I'm saying that like that main event person doesn't deserve 50 grand, you know what I mean? But like, come on, man, give it to that dude in fight 2 who like that would change his life, you know, like 50 grand. All right, you know, you're not retiring on 50 grand, but I mean, you're going to pay off some debt. You're going to, you know, pay your, whatever it may be. Like, I wish they would do that, you know? And so, you know, with Diego, like you said, with all that journey, and he racked up multiple bonuses in a row, and you're like, man, can you imagine that? Like, you're grinding on the scene, and all of a sudden you're making more money than you've ever made in your life before. And it's just, what a feel. You know what I mean?
We did his taxes a year ago for 2023, right? Which was the year his debuted. And he didn't ever have any money for taxes before his first year. So we're just literally printing out bank statements, and I'm going line by line and just, this is food, this is gas, whatever, you know? I looked at the day that he got signed to the UFC, $1,632 to his name.
It's amazing, man. That is amazing.
And I'm sitting here going like, dude, life is wild. Anything is possible.
No guarantees, but just keep going at it, man.
And I don't know, like I thank God Sean called him. I don't know what. Finally, maybe Sean's like, you know what, maybe it's my time to give Diego a shot. But it's like, so many guys have been signed from that period, right? He hadn't fought in a minute.
It's crazy, man.
It's a wild ride.
You talk about Glover Teixeira. That's a great story too, man. It's amazing, man.
I always laugh. I know Glover. Like, we see each other, we say hi, we're good friends. We always talk about Nicholas Mota. Stud. So, but he must think I must gas him. So he's probably like this, because I'm always like, dude, I use you as the example so much, man. Like, you are the definition to me of a fighter and of perseverance. When you won the belt, Glover, I know you're not my client, but I had tears in my damn eyes. I was bawling for you, bro. I was like, dude, that guy deserved it.
It's what he went through to get where he is amazing. And it's funny. So I rarely, I mean, you can go through on my social media feed. I rarely take pictures with fighters. I just, through the journalism days, that's very unprofessional. You're supposed to be covering these athletes. Obviously, now that I'm more of a broadcaster than a journalist, maybe lacks a little bit. I still don't do it because it just feels weird to me. But one night at CFFC, I saw Glover Teixeira standing there, and I was like, he was hanging out. He comes to the local shows. He supports his guys. He's cornering them. And he was there, and I was like, we were at the after party, and I was like, let me take a quick picture with you real quick. And it was just so funny to me, because I'm like, just a couple 40-year-old dudes drinking a cold beer, you know what I mean? But like, look at what this journey this guy has gone through. He is so beloved, man. I don't know anybody. I do not know one person in the sport that has a bad thing to say about Glover Teixeira and wasn't so happy for him when he won.
He is what you're supposed to be.
Yep.
And like him, and even Charles are 8-8 in the UFC and figures it out. I just had a talk with one of my veterans that's still in the UFC now. You know, I said, bro, anything's possible. The only limitations are we put in our head. I mean, Charles woke up one day and he goes, you know what? It's time for me to be who I'm supposed to be.
Isn't that crazy? Because I mean, look, like, you know, you remember, I mean, the criticism around him, and you know, I think it was fair that like he kind of quits sometimes. You know what I mean? You see moments where you're like, I don't, you know, and then he just became a killer. Yeah. After all, I mean, it's just unbelievable, man.
The stories of the sport, like look at us. We're still fans at heart. You know, like Glover's. Like I said, he probably sees me and goes, "Bro, what's with you, bro?" Like, you're always like, I'm like, man, like, I love you, man. Like, when you won, like, I was like, people are like, is that your client? I'm like, no, it's not my client. I just like, that's what this is about. This is why I do this.
It's amazing.
You know, like when Brandon I cried like a baby. Like, if you would have told me when we signed Brandon, when he was cut from the UFC, I had no idea. To be honest, when he got back in the UFC, I thought we won. In my mind, I'm like, we did it.
We did it.
At the very least, he looks at his daughters, my goddaughters, and he tells them, hey, you stick with it, you can achieve your dream. That's what I thought. The whole rodeo that was ran, man.
Unbelievable.
You know?
How great of a guy is that guy, man? Yeah. It's just unbelievable. You know, it's something about this sport. I just think it breeds good people. You know, because you talk about what happens when it goes wrong. I just think it humbles you, man. It just makes you, it makes you, my Dan Stupp, who started MMA Junkie, he worked in baseball before, and he used to always laugh about just like how different it was, like, you know, being in the baseball locker room. It's not like you're just like, you know, hey, talk to the athletes, or, you know, they'll give you 15 minutes of their time, whatever. it's unbelievable how cool the people are there in this. I mean,
100%.
obviously there's a bad seed here and there, but not many, to be honest with you.
No.
When I'm meeting somebody for the first time and they're talking, who's your favorite fighter? Like, who do you like? I'm like, how do you name them? Like there's so many amazing stories and amazing people.
I think because in other sports, I truly believe talent can take you places your character's not ready to go to.
Right.
I find it very hard to believe in this sport that you can get somewhere, maybe the super talented, maybe like the very weird, but
right.
I mean, you're going to need high character because like when I sign a kid, I tell you right now, John, the first thing I say, the only thing I can promise you is adversity. I'm going to tell you the same thing my college coach told me when I went to sign to play baseball for him. The only thing I'm going to promise you is adversity. And the second promise I'll make is that I'll stick by your side every second of the way and through that adversity. I remember looking at that coach like, you're my guy.
That's it.
But that's really, I mean,
that's
I don't know how you can be in the sport and not be a good human.
I agree.
Because it's going to test you every which way. You're going to be like, dude, F this game. I think I'm starting to get soft. There was Contender Series. My client, Malcolm Wellmaker, had a great knockout.
Yep.
I know what Malcolm went through to get there.
Right.
So I was
thrilled.
I was over the moon because I know the price Malcolm made, the sacrifices he made. I get emotional thinking about it. But I saw the opponent, and he's from England, small town, didn't come from like a big Cage Warriors show, right? And I knew what that meant to him. And for the first time, I found myself like, man, maybe I am getting old and soft in my old age because it just like, I found myself like,
bro,
oh man,
the Contender Series.
I don't know this guy. You know what I mean? Like,
but it's heart wrenching when the Contender Series, especially when there's not like any crowd there at all, and like where the family's sitting, and like they're all supporting this dream. I'll tell you the other one that breaks my heart too is because it's inevitable. It's the same, and I wish it would stop. Every fighter, to a man, to a woman, after they lose, what's the first thing they do? They go to their team and say, "I'm sorry, man." And you're like, bro, stop.
Yeah.
And it's a universal truth. They all walk back to, guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Man, and I know it's what they feel in that moment. It's like, you got nothing to be sorry for, man. Not a damn thing to be sorry for,
Yeah.
So it's tough. But yeah, watching the families is gut-wrenching, man. Like
Contender Series gets me.
I'm getting old and soft too because I have to like look away. I'm like, I can't watch it.
Because at one moment you're like, man, I know what that guy paid, the guy that won, but the guy that lost, I'm like, man, I know he's thinking I got to go back to the regional scene, rack out a couple more wins, get back here and try to do it again. Like it's
not easy, man.
That's not easy. That's brutal. That's a lot of work.
100%, man. So. That's why the ones at the highest at the top, man, you got to celebrate them. You got to enjoy. You got to really recognize what they did to get there. Everybody on the UFC roster, man. Everybody on the UFC roster.
John, people always say, like, Jason, you celebrate everything. Like, bro, I bought Brandon Moreno and threw him a party when he got 1 million followers. Like, I try to, like, anything I can be a part of, I can celebrate. If I know something went down, I try to celebrate because the wins are so far and few in between in this sport. You have to really have to count them because you don't know. Like, I remember Bobby Green was in a huge streak in, like, 2013, 14 in the UFC, and then he got injured, and I think it was like 2 or 3 years till he won a fight again. And Bob's like, why do you always celebrate the wins? I'm like, Bob, remember? And he's like, damn, you're right. He's like, remember we were in San Jose and we beat Josh Thompson? We were kids. We were eating Mexican food after, and we thought this was going to keep happening over and over and over. If you'd have told me that was the last time, I was like, so forgive me, Bobby, but we grew up together. You've been with me for 15 years. I love you. I'm going to celebrate you like a parent, and I'm going to be jumping up and down because you just don't know this damn game, I mean, Bobby, beautiful win at 300. Had a setback against Patty. I mean, like, same thing as Matt, right? You just never know.
I love Bobby Green, and I love that he's getting the respect now. I feel like he's finally, like, people are starting to see, oh, this guy's got a great personality.
Yeah.
Obviously, his fighting style is fun. Definitely has, without question, the best entrance into the cage of all time. I mean, that's unbelievable. You love that. But I love that I feel like people are finally coming around to give him that respect that he's been grinding for so long. You know what I mean? It's a personality and a fighting style. Love seeing that. And I'll tell you one thing, man. And that if I have any regrets from when I was doing 35, 40 shows a year, when I was going to every single UFC event, it's that I didn't probably take time in that moment to, like, maybe stay in that foreign city for an extra day.
Yes.
Or maybe, I wanted to get back. I mean, I wanted to get back to my family. You know what I mean? And I think it was for good reason. But that if there is one regret, it's like I didn't take some more time to really appreciate being there because you said, I'll be back to Brazil. I'll be back to Australia. I'll be back to, wherever it is. Yep. And not really truly appreciating and enjoying, the moment of being there. And, obviously I'm still going to go travel. I think, moving forward, I'll go to like big pay-per-view events and stuff. But but I'll try to take a little moment, enjoy it a little bit more. You know what I mean? And appreciate it.
It's funny to say that. I've been really trying to, my wife's been trying to help me a lot with this, because it's like, what makes you great is you're always trying to go after more. What's next? What's next? And then, you know, the thing is, there's something to be present though, and just enjoy the moment, you know, but you also don't want to get caught sleeping. So you're finding this balance of like, I'm going to be present and enjoy this, but the manager hat's hard to turn off, right? Like a guy gets a win. You're already thinking about how you can capitalize this win to the best of your abilities for him or her, right? You're trying to help that person. You got to catch the heat while it's hot, right? Because in our sport now, you have a win Saturday, and by next week, there's another person, you know, so the game is moving at rapid speed. So I'm just trying to find that balance of being present and not,
dude,
you know, like
it's so hard, right? Because like, you know, obviously I was coming up from a different perspective, but like as a media member, and like, you know, we're always trying to constantly break news and put out news and all that. And so, you know, you don't want to put your phone down for 3 hours to have dinner and an evening with your wife and kid, because what if you get a call from Dana White, or what if you get a call from a key manager or a fighter or whatever it may be, and you missed it? You know what I mean? You missed out on that scoop. Now, when you step back and realize, cool, chill. Like there'll be other scoops, there'll be other stories. This game will continue to go on. But it's hard to get to that point, because you're like, I got to be on top of everything. I got to be on top of everything. So I can imagine as a manager, I mean, obviously we see like,
I take my phone in the shower, John. I'm not gonna lie with you. I can't miss a call. Like I literally, it'll.
You know who's the matchmakers?
Yes.
The UFC matchmakers. Like, it's so funny because I know fans like, I would love that job. That would be the best job ever. I get to make all the fights. They have the worst job in the world.
I would love if people could realize Sean or Mick's phone for one day.
Oh. Imagine that, man. Just, bro, it's hard to put it down. It's hard to be present on. But it is. It's striking that balance, right? Because you don't want to be complacent. You know, like if you're like, well, I'm taking a day to spend with my family. Were you really? Or were we just being lazy that day?
Especially guys like us that we kind of create our own path here. It's like, I don't want to go back. I like this now. Like, this is what everything I thought I wanted in my life I'm getting. Like, I don't want to. But at the same point, it's like, dude, Jay, chill. Like,
yeah, if you're not enjoying it, then why did you want it?
Let me ask you this, and a little off topic, but speaking of this, I find lately in the media, I'll say media loosely. These fights are in the works.
Oh my God.
I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And I'm gonna say, from my point of view, it bothers me because it drowns my phone, because the people that do things on the up and up, they are all checking with me, as they should. So I try to be respectful to them, but it bogs down. I mean, you got 10, 15 sites hitting you up about this, and you're like, dude, I never even discussed this dang fight. But it just seems like it's
look, man, it's social currency, right, for these news sites. You know what I mean? Whether it be social media, whether it be the traditional media, the ones that you think of, the junkies, the fightings, like you said, they're gonna do the right thing. They're gonna check, but yeah, it creates unnecessary work for you guys. And I don't understand. I mean, some of it just seems like it's downright like it's just fabricated, just made up. It's like people are but see, that's the real interesting thing, right? Like Dana White came out the other day and said, like, I see a day where kind of the media goes away and it's more this influencer thing. And he's right. Like, influencers do have power and do get messages out, but they also don't carry that same responsibility that a journalist, if they're conducting themselves with proper way, has to vet things and has to do things right. So there's that balance there. You know, I understand, like, these influencers and this, you know, if you want to call, I mean, whoever you want, content creators, we want to say, like, they do have reach. And man, there's so many places to reach the fans now. But it's scary when they don't carry it around with the same responsibility. And all we're talking about is bout agreements. You know what I mean? Of a fight that, like, what does it care if why do you care if you're first on that? Like,
I feel like they're guessing. I feel like they're guessing and just throwing it out there. And if they say in the works,
that gives you some, hey, I didn't say it was agreed to, man. I didn't say it was done. I said it was in the works.
It's like this gray area,
Yeah, well,
I had to ask.
It's being discussed. What does that mean? I mean, we're discussing a lot of things, you know what I mean? So, I get it, man. Everybody wants to break that news. Everybody wants to be first. Like I said, that's the thing. That got to a point to me, too, where I started to get really tired of that. It's like, what are we chasing after, man? Like, come on, man. Like, we're not government watchdogs here. You know what I mean? Like, what are we really reporting on? Like, fight agreements? Like, come on, man. Like, settle down a little bit.
Yeah, the other day I got bad and I was getting annoyed. I was like, okay, just relax, Jay. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. I saw Danny Rubenstein tweeted something the other day that's exactly saying basically that. Like, hey, all you're doing is creating more work for me, number one, and two, potentially costing my client an opportunity if the UFC is like, hey, man, what are you talking about this stuff for? This isn't even done yet. You know what? Now, it wasn't even done yet, and now you pissed me off. Now it's not going to be done. How about that? You know what I mean? It's like...
And we've heard, that's possible. So that's also the frustrating
part. I'm not a fan. And the thing is, though, I don't know how you can't fix it. The way social media is now, the way, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, TikTok, whatever, you can't stop it. It's just going to be out there. Yeah. You just got to hope that fans know, like, hey, these are your trusted sources. These are your trusted people. These are the people that do it the right way. I mean, Dan Stupp, man, was big about that and creating Junkie. Everything was AP style. And, if we heard about a bout agreement, I mean, it could be somebody that you're like, yo, this is somebody, this is a good relationship of mine, and he says this is done. We don't publish it until we talk to the other side too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just to make sure. Like, I know.
You guys were always on the up and up with
that's it. Like, we got to make sure we have both sides. We got to make sure we know.
It just seems like the last 6 months to a year, it's really gotten out of hand. It's really gotten to a point.
But I think people probably don't realize that there really is some, like, it does cause issues. You know what I mean? I think they're probably just like, whatever, I'm just having fun. You know what I mean? I'm building followers for myself.
I have the actual clients call me, hey, is this really? I'm like, no, I would have called you,
Yeah. And look at what that could do. And then what if by chance, what if it is really like they're just guessing? Yeah. You know what I mean? And sometimes you can. Like, sometimes it's easy. You're like, well, like, Jared Cannonier has a big win the other day. Well, we can look at the names up here. As well
kind of guess where it's going, yeah.
You know what I mean? But what if they just guess and it does end up being that? You know what I mean? And like you said, your client calls you and is like, why wouldn't you tell me that first? You're like, bro, that's not what's happening. And then it does end up happening. Like, so were you lying to me?
Exactly.
You wouldn't tell me the truth earlier? You lied to my face about it? Like, no,
it's crazy.
People don't realize there's real consequences.
The game of telephone.
That's it. That's it.
Well, John, I really appreciated our talk. I always end the convo with the same 3 questions.
All right.
I'm curious for yours now because I know you have a similar, crazy story like mine. But what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Don't hesitate. Just don't. I spent too many months and years wondering, wrenching over it, not sure if I should. Just go for it, man. Go for it. You only live once. Just if you have it and you believe in it and you're passionate about it, go for it.
Nice. Any quote on a billboard on I-15 right now, what would you take?
Oh, man. Something that motivates me or something?
Anything. It's your billboard.
It's my billboard. I put a quote up there. Watch more MMA. go support regional MMA.
Yes,
that's what it means. Go support regional MMA. Chiefly I'd want it to be CFFC, of course. But honestly, really, like, if you're an MMA fan and you haven't gone to a regional event, now look, across the country, across the world, there's going to be varying levels of quality. There's no doubt about it. We've seen from the top, tip top run very well to not very good. But the bottom line is, man, you're supporting people chasing their dreams, man. And the ticket price is going to be closer to that thing that I paid at UFC 16 than it is at UFC 300, So go out there and support local MMA.
Nice. And then last one song, rest of your life on your iPod. What
you got? One song for the rest of my life. Actually, what's funny is, I don't know why, Bubba Sparks' Deliverance is my wake up thing right now. Okay. It's got a good beat to it,
it does.
But it also has good message in the lyrics. That's actually my alarm right now to wake me up every morning. Dustin Poirier actually walked out to that one time, and for whatever reason I like that song, but I like that message. Hey,
love it.
One day you can be high, one day you can be low, and you're gonna see who stuck around there and who was there with you.
I got on a playlist. Okay, let's go.
That might be it.
Well, thank you, John, for coming on. Guys, catch us on Spotify and our YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in, and please come back soon. Bubba Sparks, that's a good one. That's a good one.